We're going to talk a lot about statistics and numbers. I'm going to put you right in a nice sleep. No, I'm just kidding. There might be a couple instances of us talking about numbers and whatnot, but don't worry, it's not going to be heavy. You're not going to sit through a committee meeting. I'm trying to figure out all the membership numbers. So sit back and relax. Okay, so this is the topic for today, and it's on the ebb and flow, right? The rise, decline, and renaissance of Freemasonry. We talk mostly amongst Masons about the rise, and then more importantly, over the past probably 67 years is the decline, right? But what about the renaissance, right? So we'll get to that near the end of it. But I want to start out with a little story, and the Grand Secretary can confirm that this is actually I didn't pay my dues, I promise you, okay? So, let's start out with a story. The month is November, the year is 2006. A young man enters a Masonic lodge in a small town in California to receive his third degree of Masonry, also known as the Master Mason degree. He has met many great men, has had valuable discussions. They're not entirely Masonic, but enjoyable nonetheless. He wonders why he quickly progressed through the degrees, only receiving the first degree or entered apprentice in September, his second degree or fellowcraft in early November, and now his Master Mason degree in the same month. Is this moving too quick? Where is the esoteric knowledge that he was going to gain? Where was the Masonic education and discussion of the rituals and its meanings? It seems to be moving too fast, he says to himself. Perhaps at the end of the Master Mason degree, all will be revealed to him, and he will obtain the knowledge and information that he was seeking. The third degree ends. He eats his turkey club sandwich in the dining room with the rest of his brothers, and then goes home for the evening. A deeply profound experience has taken place to this young man, and maybe it will be talked about or discussed at that illustrious stated meeting that he will now be able to attend. Surely the stated meetings are where the secrets and esoteric knowledge of Freemasonry are being discussed, he tells himself. A year passes and nothing has been told to him. The bills have been paid. The multiple ceremonies are being worked on. The local charities are being funded and awarded scholarships and donations. But where is this discussion of Freemasonry outside the rituals themselves? He wonders why his degrees were done in short form and not in the traditional long way. The degrees appear to him to be more of a means to an end, and he tries to grapple with the reason for why men even become Freemasons in the 21st century. Perhaps this story might seem familiar to some of you, or maybe you have experienced some younger Freemasons in your lodge with some of these frustrations. They read about the knowledge and esotericism of Freemasonry, but are met with lodges that mostly are social clubs that have rituals for the sake of having rituals. This research and this topic that we're going to talk about today came out of a wanting to understand this process that occurred to this young man. The topic of this presentation was Masonic membership in the United States in the 20th century and the 21st century as well. More specifically, this topic is centered around the rise in membership in the early 20th century, the decline in membership that started in the 1960s, and then the renaissance of membership in the 21st century. The significance of Freemasonry within American social and historical context lies in its influence on the foundational structures of American society. Its role in shaping civic and community engagement, and its reflection of changing societal values over time. Freemasonry has contributed to the development of American ideals of democracy, brotherhood, and philanthropy, while also adapting to and reflecting broader social and cultural shifts. Its evolution from a widespread community pillar to a more introspective organization seeking quality membership highlights broader trends in American social life, including shifts in community involvement and for the search for personal and spiritual growth. And believe it or not, this book actually is what started this research. It's called Bowling Alone, and it's by a famous academic by the name of Robert D. Putnam, right? postulates that in the 1960s people stopped interacting and going to social groups, right, because of television, suburbanization, and so forth. So this is where this is coming from. The main argument being made here is that the transformation of Freemasonry and its role in membership dynamics from the early 20th century to the 21st, emphasizing the shift from quantity to quality in membership and the resurgence of esotericism in the late 20th century and early 21st. This topic looks at how the Masonic Lodge reacts as the 20th century progresses and argues that the rise in membership immediately after both World War I and World War II was superficially bloated lodges with inactive members. Rather than representing increased lodge influence, these new members in name only caused a fundamental dilemma within lodges. Ultimately, by the late 20th century, lodge leaders decided that adherence to central principles of Freemasonry should prevail over recruitment efforts that risked diluting the membership with a paper member, right? By the early 21st century, the emergence of the internet brought on a renaissance within Freemasonry that demonstrates that as membership numbers have decreased, there has been an increase in the proliferation and discussion of Masonic philosophy, education, and symbolism within lodges, which looks at a long line of esoteric thought and promotion within the fraternity since its foundation. Okay. This topic, though, comes off the shoulders of previous work that's been done that looks at a kind of external force on which played on Freemasonry from American society, and to give influential insight to the issues that this topic raises. We need to talk about that, to see these external forces, because mostly this topic's looking at internally how the Freemasons themselves dealt with this membership issue, right? And so one author already brought up in the previous lecture is Stephen C. Bullock in Revolutionary Brotherhood, and he offers kind of this comprehensive look at Freemasonry's impact on American social order from its inception in England to the American Revolution to the early 19th century. And Bullock argues that Freemasonry provided a framework for the colonial elite to establish a ruling class while also playing a crucial role in shaping American culture post-revolution. Despite the selective nature, the lodge grew more inclusive, allowing those outside the ruling class to join. The Christianization of Masonic rituals, according to Bullock, played a part in spreading Christian truths, showcasing the lodge's adaptability to social changes in a young, forming nation. Also, another great Masonic author that influenced these external forces that played on Masonry is David G. Hackett, and a book that he wrote called The Religion at Which All Men Agree. And he explores the nuanced role of Freemasonry in American men's religious life during the 19th century. Hackett suggests that Masonic lodges offered a spiritual refuge and moral instruction for men who found themselves at odds with conventional Christianity, challenging the notion that American men were less religious than their female counterparts. This period underscores the lodge's significance in providing an alternative space for expressing religiosity, highlighting the continued appeal of Freemasonry's spiritual and esoteric aspects well into the 21st century. And then lastly, probably one of the best books that was written kind of showing how Masonry has been shaped by external forces was Lynn Dunmel's Freemasonry American Culture. And she examines the transformation of Masonic lodges in the context of America's urbanization and commercialization, marking a shift from sacred spaces into more open, commercially oriented clubs post-World War I. This era saw Masonic rituals evolve from secretive bonds to theatrical performances, reflecting broader cultural and social changes. Meanwhile, discussions on Freemasonry's decline in membership highlight the need for internal examination within organizations like Freemasonry to understand the factors influencing these trends. Further research into Freemasonry, including perspectives from Prince Hall, Native American tribes, and even co-Masonry, could shed light on how these groups navigated membership changes throughout the 20th century, with California's Grand Lodge serving as a kind of a pivotal study point for this, to understanding Masonry's evolution in the last 20th century. But before we can dive deeper into the quality versus quantity issue that is arising as far as this debate, and the issues arising from the push and pull, we must first look at the definition of esotericism within a Masonic context. Something pretty interesting that maybe some of you might be able to relate to, and here is this meme that has popped up, probably in the 2010s by a brother from Canada. And just read it by yourself. Okay, so this is kind of a meme that can represent this topic. Been there, done that. Got the t-shirt. Okay. The Freemasons' expansion in the 19th century underscores not only their quest for an organized life amidst new conditions in the United States, but also highlights the enduring allure of Freemasonry's esoteric elements. This necessitates an understanding of what esotericism from a Masonic viewpoint, which diverges from its general definition as knowledge limited to a selected group. Sean Eyre's work sums up this definition quite well regarding the differences. Masonic esotericism is multifaceted, encompassing secrets reserved for members, symbolized by the division between exoteric, the public, and esoteric, right, or the private, and that knowledge there contained. This division, first articulated by William Preston in the early 1800s, underscores the Masonic tradition of segregating knowledge between initiates and the uninitiated, right, reflecting a deeper symbolic layer of understanding only accessible to those within the fraternity, right? So that's one definition. Masonic esotericism manifests itself in two primary forms: the secrecy of rituals and lectures meant only for members' ears, and the concealed meanings within Masonic symbolism and rituals. The latter form emphasizes the distinction within Freemasonry itself between those adepts in the esoteric knowledge, embedded in rituals, and newer members yet to grasp these deeper understandings. This internal division suggests that Masonic rites carry both explicit and implicit lessons, with the esoteric understanding reserved for only those who have undertaken a more profoundly study of Masonic principles, or for those who have the eyes to see or the ears to hear. The concept of veiled truths, accessible only through dedicated study and interpretation, highlights the complex nature of Masonic knowledge and its emphasis on a layered comprehension of its teachings. Furthermore, Masonic esotericism is linked to a broader domain of Western esotericism, so this is kind of the third understanding of what esotericism means, which includes fields as alchemy, Kabbalah, Christian Hermeticism, which were popular during the Renaissance. Freemasonry is often seen as a continuation or a revival of these ancient philosophies and mystical practices, positioning the fraternity within a wider tradition of esoteric thought. This perspective has been a focal point of Masonic authors from the late 19th century into modern times, underscoring the fraternity's role in the perpetuation and exploration of esoteric knowledge. The enduring interest in Masonic esotericism, despite the fluctuations of membership over the centuries, attested significance of these esoteric principles in the ongoing evolution and education within Freemasonry. Current research in the newly developed field of Western esotericism, with the help of scholars like Wouter J. Hanegraaff at the University of Amsterdam, is at the forefront of this intellectual endeavor. So, bridging the historical depth of Masonic esotericism with its practical applications, are you confused yet? Freemasonry's integration into American society showcases the fraternity's broader impact beyond secretive rites, connecting ancient wisdom with the foundations of modern democratic and civic principles. So this is probably a famous slide or a graph that everyone has probably seen at one point in their life. Freemasonry's establishment and its early role in American society can be understood as foundational to the country's development. Freemasonry, with its origins rooted in the Enlightenment and older guild traditions, offered a unique blend of moral philosophy, community engagement, and a network for emerging nations' elite and middle class. Its lodges served as hubs for intellectual discourse, charitable activities, and social gatherings, laying the groundwork for democratic principles and civic responsibility. Freemasonry's influence extends into the political realm, with several founding fathers and key figures in American history being members, thereby embedding Masonic ideals into the fabric of American government and culture. The fraternity's emphasis on personal integrity, ethical conduct, and civic responsibility helped shape the character of American leadership and contributed to the development of democratic and philanthropic institutions. Through its early role in the American society, Freemasonry became a symbol of unity, progress, and the pursuit of knowledge, reflecting the evolving identity and aspirations of this young nation. During the 20th century, Freemasonry in California experienced significant growth, especially around the world wars, leading to a shift away from esotericism towards more social and Americanist orientations. This influx of members prompted discussions within the Grand Lodge of California about maintaining the quality of Masonic education and the philosophical depth of its practices amidst the expanding membership numbers. Concerns were raised about the fraternity becoming more of a social club, with a diminished focus on spiritual and educational foundations. For instance, the Grand Master of Freemasons of the state of California in 1918 proclaimed at the annual communication of that year, quote, "The conception that the prosperity and greatness of a lodge is measured by its large membership and its wealth is erroneous. That lodge is prosperous and great which commands the affections of its members and displays spiritual rather than material wealth. The conferring of degrees is essential and desirable, but a lodge abrogates some of its responsibilities and neglects its fairest opportunities when it devotes its entire time to the conferring of degrees and fails to unite its membership into a homogeneous spiritual and working whole. This homogeneity can be accomplished only by assiduous attention to the needs and desires of those who are already Masons, as it does to the prayers of those seeking to become Masons. By failing to respond to the intellectual and spiritual demands of their members, some of our lodges are losing the interest and active support of many of the best Masons of California and are in danger of becoming the patrons of the mediocre," end quote. The leadership grappled with balancing an increase in social activities and the need for Masonic education during this time, reflecting a broader transformation within the organization towards a more accessible and community-oriented approach. Despite efforts to emphasize social aspects in Americanism, there remained an undercurrent of desire to preserve the esoteric and philosophical aspects that traditionally defined Freemasonry. This period marked a pivotal time in Freemasonry's history where the challenge was to accommodate a growing demand for social engagement while striving to retain core values and practices that had long been fundamental to the Masonic tradition. The dilemma of quantity versus quality of membership and the struggle to maintain Masonic ideals amidst societal changes highlighted the complexities of Freemasonry's evolution during this time. The discussion and decisions made during this time reflected broader trends in American society and the challenges faced by fraternal organizations, not just Masonic, in adapting to changing social landscapes. Freemasonry's journey through this period underscored the ongoing tension between tradition and adaptation, illustrating the challenges of preserving a rich heritage while remaining relevant in a rapidly changing world. This tension between maintaining Masonic tradition and adapting to societal shifts sets the stage for understanding the post-World War II era, where Freemasonry's brief surge of membership reflects a broader societal inclination towards community and fraternity before facing the challenges of an evolving social landscape that emphasized individualism and altered patterns of engagement. So let's look at the decline, and if there's one image that can kind of display the decline, it's this, right? An old lodge that's dilapidated, crumbling, right? After World War II, Freemasonry experienced a notable surge in membership, reflecting a societal turn towards communal and fraternal organizations. However, this initial increase was followed by a gradual decline from the 1960s onward, attributed to shifting societal values towards individualism and changes in social engagement patterns. Efforts by the Grand Lodge in the 1950s to boost attendance and engagement, such as recommending shorter meetings and more social activities, highlight attempts to adapt to these changing dynamics. By the mid-1960s, the trend of declining membership became evident. Even as the Grand Lodge of California reported minimal growth, contrasting with the nationwide trend of reduction. This period marked the beginning of a struggle against an aging membership base and financial strains, exacerbated by suspensions for non-payment of dues. Despite these challenges, though, the Grand Lodge remained hopeful, emphasizing the importance of Freemasonry in California and its potential for future growth. Something interesting to note is that when you look at the United States as a whole, California was kind of one of the last to start seeing a decline in membership. I think you see it nationally around 1964, is where you see most of the lodges start to decline. It took about until 1966 for California to start to see a decline. The subsequent decades saw continued challenges, with the 1970s and the 1980s marked by significant losses in membership. Reports from these years underscore the growing concern over the fraternity's aging demographic, financial difficulties, and a diminishing interest in Masonic values and education. The Grand Lodge's efforts to emphasize Masonic education and adapt to societal changes were aimed at reversing this decline in membership and engagement, reflecting a broader struggle to preserve the relevance and appeal of Freemasonry in the United States. The Freemasonry community, though, internally debated the balance between increasing membership numbers and maintaining the quality of its membership, especially in the light of declining membership post-World War periods and into the late 20th century. The leadership focused on various strategies to attract and retain members, including enhancing Masonic education and streamlining meetings to foster better engagement and fellowship. However, concerns about diluting the fraternity's core values and traditions persisted, emphasizing the need to preserve the integrity of the Masonic practices while adapting to changing societal expectations. So, during the 1966 annual communication, the Grand Secretary reported on a 10-year study of suspension for non-payment of dues within the lodges. The Grand Lodge found that 12,000, here's one of your numbers, it's a long time, 12,987 members were suspended, and it represented more than all the brethren raised in a 2-year period. The Grand Master at that time said that not only was the membership decreasing, but that the average age was increasing as well. This is in 1966. Okay. But not to worry, because the other Grand Lodge in the United States were recording greater losses. So California wasn't doing that bad compared to the rest of the United States. The Committee on Correspondence looked at all the proceedings from the 49 Masonic jurisdictions in the United States and indicated that the biggest problem concerning Freemasonry is, quote, the preservation of Freemasonry's fundamental philosophy and landmarks in light of constant changes in the 20th century, some of which was having an impact on Masonry in general, end quote. Let's jump forward a little bit in time. At the 1980 annual communication, another milestone was reached in the decline of membership. The Grand Secretary noted the largest loss in a single year to date at 4,147. Included with this loss, the Grand Secretary also notes that the large number of deaths that happen each year is due to the membership boom of the 1920s. So they can already see a reasoning behind why this membership is declining. Lastly, a trend was shown that members were now not finishing their degrees and were not progressing in their Masonic journeys in lodge anymore. Even so, the Grand Master at the time, as Grand Masters should do, she remained very optimistic, and that even though membership might be declining rapidly, that lodges still had the ability to develop the greatest potential of its members, regardless of the number, right? So you see that quality versus quantity pulse still being played out in the 1980s. Let's Jump forward even further. A decade later, the declining membership continued to be an issue that appears to have no end in sight. At the 1990 annual communication, the Grand Master lamented during the State of the Craft section of the annual meeting when he noted that more consolidations are occurring, and the inspector's report showed that more are planned for the following years. He stated that, quote, deaths, demits, and suspensions for non-payment of dues far exceed the number that we are raising. Entered apprentices and fellow crafts are being dropped at an alarming rate, end quote. The Grand Lodge at this annual communication expressed the need for Masonic education and even argued the Lodge dropouts decrease when an interest is shown in promoting the qualitative experience through educational topics presented to its members. The net loss of members of the Grand Lodge continued to rise in the 1990s and progressed, and the Secretary's report on membership statistics seemed bleak and less optimistic about the future. The Grand Secretary stated that a serious look should be taken at losses due to suspension for non-payment of dues. This is in the 1990s. Amidst the backdrop of adapting to new societal norms and the quest for maintaining essence of Freemasonry, the early 21st century heralded a revival in interest that bridged the gap between traditional Masonic values and modern societal intrigue, demonstrating how external cultural influences and a strategic focus on the fraternity's unique aspects can rejuvenate engagement and membership in an evolving world. The early 21st century marked a turning point for Freemasonry, with a notable decrease in member loss and an uptick in interest, partly influenced by popular media with movies like National Treasure. The fraternity saw an increase in degrees performed and membership engagement, highlighting a growing appeal towards Freemasonry secrecy, esotericism, and historical significance in U.S. history. The resurgence of interest spurred by movies and literature led to a renewed emphasis on Masonic education and the expounding of esoteric knowledge, aligning with the leadership's acknowledgments of this importance of qualitative membership experience over mere plain numbers. So let's jump a little further. By 2010, Freemasonry experienced signs of revival, with an increase in lodges and membership indicating a shift towards valuing the quality of the Masonic journey. The Grand Lodge emphasized the necessity of Masonic education and a comprehensive initiation experience, moving away from the previous focus on increasing membership roles. This shift towards a more qualitative experience was evident by the reintroduction of traditional practices and an improvement in educational opportunities for members, which were also seen as a key to the health and growth of lodges. And one of these traditional practices that was brought up was the Chamber of Reflection. Continued growth into 2019 underscored Freemasonry's evolving approach, focusing on member initiation and net positive growth across divisions. Despite challenges such as financial difficulties leading to non-payment of dues, the majority expressed a desire to remain within the fraternity. The impact of COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 curtailed potential membership gains that could have happened that year, yet the emphasis on quality over quantity and a rewarding member experience remains central and key, pointing towards a sustained interest and participation in Freemasonry. The resurgence of Freemasonry membership in the 21st century is attributed to a growing interest in Masonic education and spirituality, driven by the accessibility of information through the internet and popular media. This shift towards quality and a meaningful engagement has been embraced by Freemasons who utilize online platforms for discussion and learning, reflecting a modern approach to fostering spiritual and esoteric connections within the fraternity. The internet's significant impact on group communications has transformed how Freemasons interact, enabling global discussions and sharing of Masonic knowledge beyond physical lodge boundaries, right? The digital evolution has facilitated a wider dissemination of Masonic education, allowing members to engage with the craft's philosophical aspects more deeply and broadening the fraternity's appeal to seekers of esoteric knowledge. One of the first ever internet forums to ever exist was a Masonic forum in the 1990s on CompuServe. I don't know if anyone remembers that. But yes, it was Masonic. But What I mean by this is that eBay would probably play one of the biggest pivotal roles in shaping Masonic education and the dissemination of information. Now you could be at your home out in the middle of nowhere and start collecting Masonic books from all over the world, right? Start reading. How about all those Facebook groups? Seem to be kind of toxic cesspools now of political information, but you also have lots of Masonic communities getting together from all around the world and talking on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and so forth, right? And some of these older books are now being able to be printed, and now members all around the world are being able to read this, right? Okay. Efforts by Freemasons to enhance the lodge experience through education and promotion of traditional practices have led to a grassroots movement aimed at restoring Freemasonry's historical and philosophical foundations. Initiatives like the Masonic Restoration Foundation and influential works by Freemasons advocate for a focus on philosophical development and meaningful membership experiences, signaling a shift towards prioritizing the quality of Masonic engagement over numerical growth. Anecdotal, but I remember in 2010 reading a book by Andrew Hammer called Observing the Craft, right? And it was kind of pivotal, and it kind of shaped a lot of Masonic interest during that time, because people started seeing their lodges and then looking at, well, maybe there's some other ways to do it, right? Or maybe there's a different way to perceive or look at the Masonic lodge than what is currently happening, right? Again, due to the digital age, that is about to happen. Lastly, Freemasonry operates within a realm of symbolism, allowing members to interpret meanings in a variety of subjective ways, positioning the Masonic Lodge as a meta-modern institution. We're getting a little philosophical here, so try to bear with me. This characterization reflects a blending or an oscillation between modern and postmodern traits, whereby subjective and objective realities interplay in the lodge. Metamodernism is the philosophical framework underpinning this approach, suggesting continuous movement between polar opposites, such as irony and enthusiasm, or hope and melancholy, without fully committing to either. This dynamic enables Masonic lodges to serve as vessels for this oscillation, accommodating both secular modern views and the essential requirement of spirituality among its members. Freemasonry has a unique position in navigating between modernity secularism and the postmodern acceptance of diverse truths and narratives. Lodges embody this metamodern characteristic by advocating for a search for truth and objective goals while simultaneously acknowledging the validity of various means and perspectives at either approaching that truth or trying to understand it. This approach reflects a sophisticated balance between seeking universal truths and respecting individual spiritual journeys, making Freemasonry a repository for meta-modern thought and practice. Freemasons have recognized the alignment of their traditional emphasis on instruction and education with meta-modernist kind of thinkings. This connection underscores a broader trend within the organization towards embracing a philosophical stance that allows for the coexistence of diverse viewpoints and the pursuit of enlightenment. The return to Masonic education and instruction parallels the meta-modern emphasis on navigating between different polarities, suggesting a deep and evolving engagement with contemporary philosophical discourse within the Masonic community. This evolving engagement with contemporary philosophical discourse within the Masonic community sets the stage for the 21st century and its resurgence in esoteric Masonry, illustrating how the modern embrace of meta-modernist thinking and a return to foundational principles fuel a revival of interest in Masonic rich traditions and teachings. In the 21st century, there has been a noticeable resurgence in esoteric Masonry. This conference and conferences in the past are kind of a symbol of that, right? It's reminiscent of a similar revival in the early 19th century. This modern revival suggests a cyclical nature of organizations and reflects the desires of their membership for a more profound experience, emphasizing ritual and esotericism. Historically, looking back to the 17th century for ancient wisdom and spirituality by the Freemasons of the early 19th century parallels today's Freemasons' interest in principles of Freemasonry, or a renaissance of sorts. Despite general societal trends towards a declining social groups and their participation, as noted by Putnam, today's Freemasons are increasingly drawn to the organization's foundational principles, indicating a shift in member motivation from quantity to quality within lodges. The resurgence of Masonic esotericism in the information age is driven by an interest in older texts and writings of notable Freemasons and non-Freemasons alike, such as Alvin Pike, W.L. Wilmshurst, and Manly P. Hall, who advocated for a return to the philosophical and esoteric roots of Freemasonry. These influential figures highlighted the importance of Freemasonry's symbolic and secretive aspects, fearing the dilution of its philosophical underpinnings by the more social and charitable elements of the lodges. Their work inspires contemporary Freemasons to seek a deeper understanding of the organization's purpose and to foster a lodge experience that prioritizes educational and spiritual growth over mere social interaction. The Masonic community's shift towards valuing a qualitative lodge experience over the quantitative increase in membership reflects a broader trend of seeking spiritual fulfillment and meaningful engagement within a post-secular society. Freemasonry is adapting to societal changes by balancing the inclusion of social and civic aspects with the reintroduction of esoteric and educational elements. So not pitting the two against each other, but rather kind of intermingling them into one huge cohesive whole. This evolution towards a more selective membership process aims to attract individuals genuinely interested in active participation rather than just joiners who join for the sake of joining, and also the organization's core values, marking a significant transformation in Freemasonry's approach to recruitment and member engagement. Future research on the resurgence of esoteric Masonry could yield valuable insights into broader American societal trends and the evolution of other fraternal organizations. So, Masonry could act as a microcosm for what's happening in the larger American whole. One promising area of investigation involves a comparative analysis across different fraternal organizations to understand how similar trends towards esotericism and metamodernist thinkings are developing beyond Freemasonry, such as the Oddfellows, Knights of Pythias, and others. There you go, some Oddfellows in the crowd. This could reveal broader patterns of how these organizations are adapting to contemporary societal changes. Additionally, exploring the impact of these shifts on social capital could extend Putnam's work, examining whether principles of Freemasonry and similar organizations contribute to bridging social divides. Research could also delve into how cultural and generational shifts, particularly among millennials and Gen Z, or I call them Brock tops, right? Because they have a little broccoli top on their hair, right? Influence the dynamics within these. By the way, this is what my students say. That's not my thing. Aligning with the diverging from traditional structure and philosophies. This involves assessing their expectations and values regarding spirituality, community, and personal development. A global perspective on fraternal organizations could provide a comparative understanding of how global trends in spirituality and social engagement are influencing fraternal orders as well. Moreover, and lastly, a deeper historical context of Freemasonry's evolution could offer insights into how past revivals or declines have shaped its current practices and philosophies. Finally, investigating the psychological and sociological impacts of membership in these organizations, especially with an emphasis on esoteric and spiritual aspects, could illuminate how participation affects individual well-being, identity, and social relationships. These research directions would significantly contribute to understanding the role and impact of fraternal organizations in contemporary society, navigating the challenges and opportunities of this modern world. Thank you.
I anticipate a lot of questions, some robust robust conversation. We only have a bit of time though, so I think yes, you in the front row, the sartorial fellow.
My main question is, what's the difference between metamodernism and pluralism as you define it?
So metamodernist thinking is just a kind of this new kind of ambiguous term that's been applied to